That evening was like any other evening. Phone rang, and the voice on the other end was telling me that my son had been taken to the emergency room. That wasn't something that would be unusual. Very athletic, enjoyed sports. Maybe he had turned an ankle. Maybe he had fallen away and hurt himself. So going to the emergency room was not anything that was out of the ordinary. So on the way to the hospital, not knowing exactly what was going on, thoughts ran through my mind about what I'm going to do the rest of the evening whenever we get him back home. But when I got to the hospital, it was then that I learned his reason for being there was because he had a collapsed lung. He had a collapsed lung because he had been taking drugs. He had been smoking crack, from my understanding. My 16, 17-year-old son, my precious son, the son that was so into athletics, so into pleasing his father, so into so many innocent things that I thought were keeping him occupied. I got back to the room where they had him, and he lay there gasping for breath because of this collapsed lung. And I can remember being torn, because I can remember telling him and his brother that if you ever get in trouble, I'm the last person you need to call. And thinking that that type of thing would never happen. I'd never have to worry about my child being arrested. I would never have to worry about going to a hospital even and seeing one lay on a gurney gasping for breath because something took place like it was actually occurring at this moment. I can remember him being half scared because I was now there. But I can also remember him reaching his arm up to me to hold my hand. And he said, "Dad, don't let anything happen to me." That's when it hit home for the first time that I had a son that had an issue with drugs. I mean, I can remember growing up, I was the recreational drug user. You know, it wasn't anything out of the unusual to drink a beer with my friends or to smoke a joint, occasionally take a pill that would make you feel good. That was nothing out of the ordinary, and quite a few people did it. But then they would be able to put it away. They would be able to mature out of it. They would be able to grow on in life and become something. But we were faced with the situation there where at that moment we just weren't sure if it was going to end well. We didn't know if it was going to be a wake-up call. Well, it was just the beginning. As I thought back on it from that day forward, and I considered the calluses that were on his arms, and I could see the hollowness in his face and where his temples were sunk in, and the color of his skin. This young man who spent so much time on the ball field, so much time on the basketball court, so much time around his friends, and especially around our house, which was the Kool-Aid house on the block where everybody wanted to hang out. He was now into activities that could very well end his life. After arriving back home, I know that where I was before I left and where I was whenever I returned home was two very different places. I left home realizing that my son was at the emergency room, but thinking it was because of some very innocent reason. But coming home, knowing that this was not the first time that my son had participated in drug use, but that it was something that had been going on for quite some time. Of course, it was very heartbreaking. It was something that angered me greatly, but I guess more than anything, I felt like I did not know where to turn. So I was thinking, is this something where whenever we get home that he's disciplined for? Is this something where he's grounded? His car's taken away from him? Where do we go? Uh, does he need a drug treatment program? Do we need to move him out of state? Do we need to get him away from the friends that he's in? Is he part of the wrong crowd, or is he the wrong crowd? I just didn't know. I didn't know if this was a wake-up call for him, or if this was just the beginning of my knowledge of his drug use, and how would it end? You know, would he continue to use until he dies, until it takes his life? Would he become basically a burden on the state? A burden to us? Though we would take that. But, would we become enablers in his life? Would we walk away from him? All of those thoughts were in my head that night and for the weeks that progressed. He went through a period there where he was living with his mother at the time. She was having some of the same issues with drug use herself, and it was just a bad scene. A bad scene. And then approximately 6 months later, talked to him on the telephone, and he asked for another opportunity. And of course, I welcomed him with open arms. Today, he's a successful businessman. Today, he and his wife run a very successful hotel. Today, he is the father of 2 precious children. Today, he is making his own way. Today, he's also a musician that travels and gets to share his music with so many people. And no longer is he a drug user. My name is Bryan Smith. I'm an ordained minister and director of spirituality for a major healthcare company. We raised our family in a typical middle-class neighborhood, attending church every week, and my child still became an addict.